Very good. Up next is Mr. Ron Shroder, Chief Executive Officer, President, and Chairman of the Board of Directors of Frontier Technology Incorporated, or FTI, in Beaver Creek, Ohio, a place I'm very familiar with growing up at Wright-Patterson. Mr. Shroder has nearly 35 years of diversified technical and management experience in Department of Defense, commercial, and other federal markets. During his tenure, FTI was awarded the SBA Tibbetts Award for the very best in federal innovative research. He has been a member of the Governor's Ohio Aerospace and Aviation Technology Committee and is the former national president for the Defense Planning and Analysis Society. We thank you, Mr. Shroder, for being here. Thank you very much. And Mr. Shroder, you are now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairmans Knight and Comstock and ranking members Murphy and Lipinski and the two subcommittees, thank you for the invitation to speak. It's quite an honor. Before I begin, I believe it's critical to talk about how a strong R&D culture is so important to our country and how the SBIR and STTR programs are such an important piece of that culture. If in doubt, go back to the Air Force 2014 impact study and the recent Navy study to see the incredible metrics that make this program probably the best small business program ever in the history of the country. The entire community owes a great deal of debt and gratitude to the original founders of this program. It was almost a Shark Tank-like concept that was created 35 years ago that we can all be so proud of. Major corporations like Qualcomm, Amgen, Symantec, iRobot are just the rock stars of that culture that many of us today want to be a part of. In addition to that, Congress has played an incredibly important role in that. Your adjustments over the years, not only the continued reauthorization, but trying to cut down the delays between phase ones and phase twos, looking at the size standards and how you can deal with that when it comes to commercialization, strengthening the intellectual property rights have all been incredibly important for small businesses to be successful in this program. Having said that, I think as we look at improvements for the program, we got to go back to the core and the intent of the program, and that is stimulation of technological advancement, small business innovation in the federal R&D sector, participation by the socially and economically disadvantaged businesses, as well as commercialization of the technologies into economic growth. There's a great deal to be proud of in each one of those areas. There's also some changes that can be made to improve each one of them as well. Today, I'd like to focus on the commercialization. That's where my passion is, and that's where Frontier Technology that I represent today has had the most success. What I find is it's an incredibly great opportunity. We were founded by an entrepreneur that believed the researchers should be a part of our ownership of the company. We convinced those great entrepreneurs and R&D people to come in and be a part of our company, be an owner, and then we found ourselves located in locations like southwestern Ohio, Virginia, the Southern California area, Northern Alabama, where we were fortunate enough to be with real R&D superstars in the federal government. When you combine those two, you have an entrepreneurial opportunity that is enormous. Having said that, what we found is that the phase ones, phase twos, the CPPs, the phase 2.5s, et cetera, the RIFs, were all like Shark Tank funding. They helped you, but they were not the answer. They really were associated with short-term job opportunities and short-term durations, where you really needed to be successful to give these employees and owners a long-term job was in the phase 3 commercialization. And that's where we focus most of our time. The problem is when you go to implement that, you're going to find out that it's much harder than what most people think. I'm sure it's harder than what your intent is. Because what happens is the SBIR community recognizes that they know about SBIRs. They come away with an insight from SBIRs that generally come from their interaction in phase ones and phase twos. But do most realize that phase ones and phase twos are almost the exact opposite of phase threes? Phase ones and phase twos are R&D money. Phase threes are any kind of money. Phase ones and phase twos are competitive. Phase threes are sole source. Phase ones and phase twos are limited dollar amounts. Phase threes are unlimited. When you take your opportunities for phase 3 commercialization to the people that think they understand SBIRs, and you talk about those variations in phase 3s, you typically get a response that involves it's almost too good to be true. And so today, as we go forward and try to do the commercialization, what we have found is the efforts that you've done to educate the community are the most important things you can do to help us as small businesses be successful. The Navy manual for Phase 3 guidance has had a huge impact. The Air Force Manual for Phase 3 guidance has had a huge impact. It has educated a community to say that it's real, it's allowed, let these small businesses take these technologies and grow. And so today, as you look at improving the programs, I would say definitely continue the 3% and make sure that 3% is structured in a manner that prioritizes what you care the most about, which is going to be that commercialization. Make sure there's ombudsmans, make sure there's education for the socially disadvantaged organizations that need to get into the program. Make sure that the agencies have Phase 3 offices that facilitate the knowledge of Phase 3 contracting to those people that want to tie into the technology. With those kind of changes and your existing laws that require them to report appropriately when implemented, as we heard today, at a fullest extent, I think you will see an incredible growth in the opportunities that come out of Phase 3 commercialization and the intent of this program. I look forward to questions.
Thank you. And on the Small Business Committee, we always thank you for the opportunities and for the employment that you provide. I'm going to go to the Chairwoman for Research and Technology, Ms. Comstock, for her questions.
Mr. Chairman, and I really appreciate hearing your testimony and your passion about this and the culture of innovation that you all are supporting. So what I wanted to ask is, of each of you, is what top recommendation would each of you make for improving the SBIR and STTR programs to promote innovation and really get those, cutting edge things like you've all been involved in? And then what are some examples that, some additional examples of what we can see in terms of getting that culture of innovation really thriving?
I would say the reporting. I believe that the Phase 3 success path could be dramatically increased if Congress understood the Phase 3 results that are coming out. And right now, you're kind of hamstrung with no ability to see the reports that are there. When you guys have asked for the Phase 3 aspects, we've literally had Defense Department organizations call us and say, do you have customers that want your technology? Because we need to award a Phase 3 to align with the congressional requirements. So if you can get that 3%, to put together the reporting aspects and I'll call it the recognition of what the Phase 3 is about, I think the jobs and economic growth will come natural.
This question is for the entire panel. Firms often face a disconnect when attempting to transfer their SBIR technologies to acquisition programs. If agency procurement officers were more directly involved, there could be a better match between SBIR research and an agency's needs. Wouldn't it make sense to directly incorporate acquisition personnel into the SBIR programs in terms of research solicitation and technical assistance?
You asked the question this morning to our government counterpart, and I think it was critical. And the key is the acquisition people have learned the SBIR program through ones and twos. And the rules that are there, as I said earlier, just are not the same. And so when you go, even if you, I hope you do, bring them into the process, but when you do, you really need to educate them as to what the law says. Because when you start talking about major dollars, sole source, Phase 3, et cetera, it's good that their reaction is, well, wait a minute, we can't do sole source. We don't have that authority or whatever. Well, yes, you do. And the sooner you bring them in, the less the delays will be, because we spend a great amount of time educating the community what's legally allowed.
Mr. Shroder, in your experience, how many technologies need an additional Phase 2 process, and how many go straight to commercialization are there?
For our Phase 2s, what we have found is the ones that do get a second Phase 2, those are the ones that are really ripe for the Phase 3 commercialization. We've had 6 Phase 3 awards within the last couple of years, and most of those, I think, related to ones that had received multiple Phase 2 awards. So that extra investment from a venture capital perspective has been critical, because it also gives you the time to communicate the value of the technology to the rest of the world. We're not going to rely necessarily on the POM to fund the Phase 3 commercialization. We think it's our job to go get those customers and line them up. But once we have shown the technology is worthwhile and it's matured enough that they can trust it, we think they'll invest the dollars that are already there to use it. Now we just need the ability for them to use it through the contracting officers.
Okay, and I just have one other question because I heard you all talk about the application process. So if you had to recommend one thing to Congress about how long does it take to go through the contracting process, what would that be?
Metrics. I think if you had metrics that made you understand the speed or lack thereof in the reporting that comes through, you might guide it slightly differently, because the reality is, I think we at one point mentioned that some awards have taken nearly a year. In those kind of cases, I don't think that's at all what your intent is. And when you're a small business and you've got some pretty high-tech people that you're blessed to have as employees sitting on your bench, if you don't have other work for them, by the time the award occurs, they're not even an employee anymore. So if you could get your metrics to report each agency's performance along those lines, I think it would change the culture.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, just before I yield back, I think that's very, very, very significant, and that we should, with the staff, try to find out how can we improve that process. And I yield back.
Thank you. Well, I'll make a closing statement now. Again, I'd like to thank all our witnesses for being with us today. I think both panels provided us with some excellent thoughts on these successful programs that we're doing. Whether we're doing new software programs or tracking contract payments, a new medical advice to help with cancer treatments, or a new piece of technology that might save lives on the battlefield, the SBIR and STTR programs have consistently delivered results across all federal agencies. They're worthy programs that are worthwhile and doing what they're supposed to do. But we can always do better. We're going to take some of your suggestions and thoughts that you've provided today and work to incorporate them into legislation that our committee is working on. I do want to thank you for your testimony. I'll ask unanimous consent that the hearing record be open for 2 weeks for additional written comments and written questions from members. And without objection, so ordered. This hearing is now adjourned.